Hello and welcome to Treasure Trove, an in-betweeny podcast between our usual non-stop fun ride of dragons, where we are going to talk about some of the magic items found in the Dungeon Master's Guide in the game Dungeons & Dragons, specifically 5th edition. I am your host, Tim, and I am joined by my delightful co-host, Daniel.
Hello.
He is truly a delight to have in the studio. So,
thank you.
Thank you for being here,
I appreciate
Daniel.
that. Thank you for having me.
So, we previously left off our H part with a very serious cliffhanger. I went back and listened to it, and I was about to give a spoiler, but then I censored myself with like the beep. So
That's
who knows what I said? I can't even remember what I said. I have the original recordings, but I didn't go so far as to check what they were.
Yeah, don't ruin the mystery.
Yeah. But now I'm pretty sure that episode came out in February, so it's been a wee while. We've left you guys in suspense.
Yeah. I wasn't checked. It came out in like the start of February. Like it's almost been exactly 5 months.
6 months. Right?
Oh God.
No, you're right. 5 months. And so we are at it again, Daniel and myself, about to leap with both feet into the second part of H, which has a couple of nice little items, I dare say.
Indeed.
A couple of classics. I mean, they're actually all classic. I don't think any of these are original to 5th edition. Have we had any that are original?
To 5th edition. Oh man, that's a really good question. I want to say that we haven't because of the nature of 5th edition and its magic items. Yeah. But that would actually be literally me guessing. Like I actually have no evidence to back that up. It's just based on like how 5th edition exists as an edition and then like what it's doing with magic items. So my suspicion is no, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. But sure, we have fun looking back into the history of them and see how they used to be compared to how they are now. Which is a nice little thing to have. And then seeing the adaptations is always fun. So shall we jump right on into them and see what we have to say about them?
Yeah, I think we should.
All right. So the first item in part 2 of the H episode is Heward's handy haversack. It is a wondrous item. It is rare. And that's all it gets for a description. That's it.
That's it. That's all there is. Next up is...
So, this one has quite an impressive old couple paragraphs, but sure, I'll read through the whole thing, and then we'll see how we do.
I believe in you.
Thank you. This backpack has a central pouch and 2 side pouches, each of which is an extra dimensional space. Wow. Each side pouch can hold up to 20 pounds of material, not exceeding a volume of 2 cubic feet. The large central pouch can hold up to 8 cubic feet or 80 pounds of material. The backpack always weighs 5 pounds regardless of its content. So that's pretty
handy.
Pretty handy. Placing an object in the haversack follows the normal rules for interacting with objects. Okay, that's all right. When you put something in this bag, it's like you're putting it in an actual bag.
I need you to imagine that the bag is a bag. I need you to do that for me. And if you can't do that, we can't keep playing D&D together. I'm really
please
sorry.
Suspend your disbelief that you are not placing something in an actual bag. Might be difficult.
You just like your players keep putting things in bags in the room. No. It's a metaphorical. It's an imaginary bag. It's not real.
All right. So retrieving an item from the haversack requires you to use an action. When you reach into the haversack for a specific item, the item is always magically on top. Okay, that's kind of handy.
Yeah, cool.
The haversack has a few limitations. If it is overloaded or if a sharp object pierces or tears it, the haversack ruptures and is destroyed. If the haversack is destroyed, its contents are lost forever. Although an artifact always turns up, although an artifact always turns up again somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll
explain that. So basically, in the sort of language of D&D, artifacts are like rare specific magic items.
Okay.
And there's some of them at the end of this chapter, and there's stuff like, the Axe of the Dwarven Lords or the Hand in the Eye of Vecna. And basically the idea is like, because because they're too important, they can't just be gotten rid of by doing something like this. So that's why it says they always show up somewhere else, because almost every artifact has like, this is specifically how you destroy this item, and there's no other way to get rid of it. Yeah.
Okay. I'd imagine there's somebody with like the stuff drawer, you know, that you have in your kitchen that just like has just like bits and bobs and odds and ends.
Yeah.
And someone's drawer has not been opened in like a century and is just stuffed with these artifacts. And someone will eventually open it and go, Jesus, sure, it's the Axe of the Dwarven Lords.
I can't believe you're after keeping the Axe of the Dwarven Lords from the dwarves for a century by accident.
Oh, gosh.
We're going to have to send an apology letter.
Really sorry, lads. Didn't mean it.
Terribly sorry. You're not going to believe this, but we actually didn't know we had it. I know it's hard to believe. That's the most important relic in our history. I'm aware, and I'm very sorry. But again,
very sorry.
Yeah. Anyway.
Here you go now. Sorry you went to war over that. It was in my my cluttered drawer.
Embarrassing, to be honest.
Alrighty. If the haversack is turned inside out, its contents spill forth unharmed, and the haversack must be put right before it can be used again. If a breathing creature is placed within the haversack, the creature can survive for up to 10 minutes, after which time it begins to suffocate.
Sure, yeah.
That seems pretty reasonable to me.
Just an amount of air, yeah. Just like set a number, grand.
Sure. Placing the haversack inside an extra-dimensional space created by a bag of holding, portable hole, or similar item instantly destroys both items and opens a gate to the astral plane. Wow,
Hooray.
Okay. Yay! The gate originates where one item was placed inside the other. Any creature within 10 feet of the gate is sucked through it and deposited in a random location on the astral plane. The gate then closes. The gate is one way only and can't be reopened.
Dang.
Wow. How to convince your players not to fuck around with planar weirdness.
Don't even think about it.
Don't even give it a try. That's pretty reasonable and a handy little thing, I think. It's very, very similar, obviously, to the bag of holding. Only it has 3 compartments. Ooh, and it's slightly smaller.
Yeah, three divided compartments instead of one compartment. And I think the idea that it always retrieves the item to your hand is sort of another feature of it. Like, you don't have to go searching for the item.
Now, I read through this earlier on, and it says that it appears on top.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily say that it appears in your hand.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
And that was something that I was going to say. Like I saw online as well that there were a couple suggestions that to distinguish Hjor's handy haversack from the bag of holding was to do exactly that. Like, you can think of the item and it just appears in your hand, kind of thing. Like, as a free action. So you'd be kind of going against the words of the specific item in here, which says it takes an action to do so, as opposed to the free action, which maybe might be a little bit overpowered or imbalanced. But
I kind of doubt it. I mean, if you were very worried about it as a balance option, I think the solution is to just make it a bonus action.
Sure. Because
that's faster. Or like, people often have an idea of what they want to do with their main action, and their bonus action is less important. Yeah,
and a lot of people don't get many good bonus actions that they can do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's like the wizard has very few bonus actions, for example. So like being able to access the party backpack, as a bonus action with a thought, and therefore conjure up whatever item you need to do stuff is kind of appropriate for the wizard and useful for the party.
Yeah. So you can have the wizard holding the backpack all the time, and everybody just puts everything into it. So like the barbarian is fighting and he loses his sword and he's like, "Wizard, throw me my battle axe," and he's just like, "Okay." It just appears in his hands, and he's like, "Ah," and he chucks it to them. Just like the wizard is the go-to place for your items, which is kind of funny to me. Just like, use your bonus action, wizard.
You there, wizard. There's also some interesting stuff with like how the bag works and how the rules work. So it just says retrieving an item from the haversack requires you to use an action. When you reach into the haversack for a specific item, the item is always magically on top. So immediately what I'm struck by is that the haversack as an item does not require attunement.
Yes.
It doesn't belong to anyone in particular. So if your party are fighting intelligent enemies who perhaps know that the party have something they want, like they can get it from your backpack, assuming they understand what it is and how it works, which maybe they don't initially, but they could learn eventually. You know, they could get it from your bag as easily as you could.
Yeah. Or vice versa. If your enemies or somebody that you're trying to like stalk or steal something from has one of these, you could sneak up and grab something out of the side pouch.
Yes.
But that's an interesting little point. It doesn't necessarily have to be attuned. Maybe for the old the thing that we had suggested, or maybe I had just suggested, the like having an item called to your hand immediately. Maybe that should require attunement.
Oh yeah, that could be interesting.
Or maybe we should have like a separate type of bag. I don't know.
No, that's not a bad idea. That like you basically like it does all this stuff, and if you attune to it, you can get items from it as a free action. So basically, it's faster, but it takes up an attunement slot. That seems like maybe a reasonable compromise. That like the players have to give up one of their attunement slots, which is like a limited resource across the party, but they get a more useful item, and as you say, it distinguishes it more from the bag of holding.
Yeah.
Because there's a weird thing where it says retrieving an item from the haversack requires you to use an action, and then it says when you reach the haversack for a specific item, the item always is magically on top. But the bag of holding just says retrieving an item from the bag requires you to use an action and makes no stipulations about what's in the bag, which means that rules as written, like, right, like there's no benefit.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't actually matter how big the bag is because it's always an action to get an item from the bag.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't actually matter that it's on the top. It doesn't, it literally, like, you know, it doesn't matter what's in your bag of holding. It doesn't matter how full it is. It always takes one action to search that bag and find exactly the thing you want.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about this is that it's exactly the same. You search the bag as an action, you get whatever you want, but it makes the weird stipulation that the item's always on top. But like, that is only valuable if it was faster in combat, and out of combat it doesn't matter because you have infinite time to search your bag.
Yeah.
Because the game doesn't have, like, there are two sorts of time in D&D. There's combat time, which is very rigidly measured, and there's non-combat time, which is sort of squishy.
Yeah, like you have a short conversation and suddenly you've traveled hundreds of miles.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, you know, just like real life. I will say, yeah, the other thing about the haversack and the bag of holding is that like a lot of what their rules description is just like the consequences of misusing them. So like if they're cut open or broken, they scatter everything to the ashes of the astral plane, or they just vanish forever.
Yeah.
And then if you do the thing where you stack them with another extra dimensional space, you create a gate to the astral plane, which is just a bad time for everyone. I will say something that's interesting is that it just says if it is overloaded or if a sharp object pierces or tears it, the haversack ruptures and is destroyed. If the haversack is destroyed, its contents are lost forever. So what's interesting to me about that is that there's no stipulation about the nature of the object. One of the sort of fundamental rules in earlier editions of the game was that like magic items had a kind of resilience that came with being enchanted, that meant that they could just like shrug off like a mundane dagger.
Right, yeah.
Which would probably extend even to the like bags of holding, etc.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because that's not a rule here. Like the implication is literally that like a cut purse literally like a CR1/8 thief with a dagger who in a totally normal move goes for your bag, right? Like literally what thieves did, they slash the bottom of the bag and everything falls out and they grab what they want and run. Like if they do that to your rare magic item, like they destroy it forever and you lose everything
inside of it is gone. Yeah, that's pretty I don't know about all that.
See, that's the thing, right? Like, and like to me, I'm like, okay, the job of this book is to give you like rules, because like I can make it up one way or the other. That's not a hard thing to do. But like, I'm like, you know, because to me, I'm like, the idea that it's actually vulnerable in this really straightforward way is kind of interesting and creates a conflict where the bags are way more convenient than normal bags. Like, you know, they weigh nothing, basically. But if they get cut, you lose everything. And therefore, like, do you want to maybe use them to carry your mundane gear, like, you know, your tents and your sleeping bags and all that and shit. Yeah, exactly. Like everything that takes up loads of room and it weighs a lot but doesn't have any real value, that like they can be replaced. And actually your magic items and your valuable things you'd want to keep on your person because they're safer. Yeah. Or they at least feel safer.
Yeah, I'd imagine there would be kind of a culture of that, because like as you say, the thieves and stuff would know about that. So maybe they wouldn't necessarily want to like cut your bag open, but also it could be used as a way to like sabotage a party, where like a hidden archer or like an assassin or somebody trying to sabotage the party just shoots an arrow at the bag. and it just pierces all the way through it, and it's gone forever.
And the thing is, like, I look at this and I think, like, if you have the right kind of party, there's a lot of cool drama that can go on there. Like, immediately I'm thinking, like, a great example would be that, like, a character is, like, let's say, like, dying, right? Like, they're on 0 HP, they've failed their death saving throws, and someone's gonna just, like, stab them and kill them. And you can say, like, well, actually, like, after the battle, you realize your friend's still alive. The haversack, or the bag of holding, turned the blow away, but because it was destroyed by the dagger, everything in the bag is gone.
Yeah.
So, like, you're basically, like, you haven't lost your friend, you haven't lost the PC, but all the items he was carrying have been lost, right? Like, not destroyed, just lost.
Okay.
And, like, immediately it's like, okay, well, do we go after the guy who tried to kill us? Do we go after our items because they're going to help us beat him? And, like, immediately it creates this great, like, possibility space for the party.
Yeah, while mitigating the murder of a PC.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like, you haven't lost a PC if they want to keep playing, and, you know, they've also, like, got a great reason to hate this villain because he got rid of loads of their magic items, which is just, players hate when that happens.
Not my gold.
Give up all your gold and treasure. Yeah, so, like, I think that'd be really cool, but it's definitely one of those things where, like, you would want to have the right kind of party for it. Like, I certainly feel like I could run that with our groups. I think a lot of them would think that's really cool and exciting.
Yeah.
But I can definitely understand that there would be some people who would not be in favor of it. And I almost feel like that's one of those things where, like, I'd love there to be some kind of enlightenment about that. Like, you know, it says if a sharp object pierces or tears it, like, you know, what does that mean? How sharp does it have to be? Like, is this a mundane bag for the purposes of being punctured and destroyed, or is it a magical bag that means, like, you either have to have a magic weapon, or, you know, something that, like, you have to have some kind of material that's able to damage magical gear easily, like a masterwork, you know, sword or something like that.
Yeah.
And, like, it just literally, like, it turns away normal weaponry. And, like, even stuff like like, what happens if you're caught in, like, you know, a group attack? You know, like, any AoE that deals piercing damage or slashing damage.
Good
like,
point.
does that destroy the bag?
Like an arrow of thorns?
The ranger spells that do that. And there's probably other abilities that I literally cannot think of at the moment. But I'm thinking, like, a bone storm. I think the Demi-Lich does that. I think when we covered the Demi-Lich, it has, like, a weird bone storm.
Look at the
layer
bones.
Like, I'm almost positive.
Yeah.
It has, like, a weird, like, a swirling whirlwind of bones, deals a bunch of piercing and slashing damage or something.
Yeah.
Like, does that destroy the haversack because it's a Demi-Lich and it's a powerful magical force? Like, you know? And, like, if it does, do your players know that that's going to happen? You know?
I had a thought there. Is it possible that, like, we could be so pedantic as to say, with the specific wording of that, it says pierces or tears it? So piercing damage only specifically can do it, so not necessarily slashing damage. And then tearing it isn't necessarily a specific damage, so that kind of muddies the waters a bit.
Yeah.
But how is it like a burlap sack that it could be just torn with your hands?
Yeah.
Or I guess it's kind of up to, obviously, the interpretation of the players and the DM, and then like, if a situation occurs
and what they expect from an item.
Yeah. And it could come to being at odds with some of your players' expectations.
Yes.
If you were to kind of put your foot down. But I think, obviously, it is typically best to, like, reason with your players.
Yeah,
you know,
or just, you know, communicate this ahead of time. That, like, the haversack is a leather sack. Like, it's as tough as worked leather, you know, and it's magical, so it's probably quite good quality leather, but it's ultimately a normal bag for the purposes of being destroyed. So I'm not saying that enemies are going to specifically target it, because it doesn't specify in the rules text that it appears to be a magical bag.
Yeah.
If they saw you taking something out of the bag that was bigger than the bag, they might start to put two and two together.
Yeah.
But, like, by default, it's a normal backpack.
Yeah.
Probably quite a well-made, nice-looking backpack, but just a backpack. And, you know, they would only, you know, target, quote-unquote, target the bag if they were the kind of people who might do that normally, like cut purses or, like, you know, thieves or anyone who's trying to undermine your access to supplies.
Yeah. Maybe you could... this is we're going hard on this item, but I feel like there's a lot of stipulations. Maybe you could,
like... It has only been 22 minutes of haversack chat. We need to keep going, Tim. We need to have a H part 3.
A H part 3, which is all the rest of the items. But just a small little thing. Like, so Heward's obviously a character in the world. Maybe there is a little manual that comes with every Heward's Handy Haversack that describes specifically how it is used.
That's a really good idea, Tim.
That can't be removed from it. And there you can lay out whatever stipulations you'd like, and then your players will just take it as law.
I really like that idea. That's a great idea. Literally like a user manual.
Yeah.
And like...
if it's empty, you open the bag and it's right there.
And it's there. And like it's Tim, that's a great idea. But just to add to that,
thank you.
The manual should definitely be like just one page, but every time you turn it over, there's another page on the other side.
Nice.
So you keep flipping it and it shows you like page 3, page 4, page 5, but it's just the one like whatever, like, you know, little notebook page.
It's a multi-dimensional piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's an extra-dimensional piece of paper.
Extra-dimensional, yes.
That's a really... I actually like that a lot, Tim. Just literally like... because it's a named magic item, just like have the person who made it leave a manual inside.
And have them like sign the bottom of the page.
Actually, yeah, that's a great idea. And then, I mean, that creates a whole dynamic of like, is Heward still alive in this world, or does he have a legacy of like people who still make these bags, or like is it a family business or whatever? Does he have competitors? Like, you know, maybe you want to have the bag that lets you teleport items into your bag, but that's not a Heward's Handy Haversack. That's a Howard's Handy Haversack, which is totally different.
Howard. No, his first name was Howard. His name was Howard Heward.
But like, yeah, like, and that, immediately that, like, you know, adds more to your world and lets your players start asking questions.
There you go.
So that's great.
Excellent. Shall we move on, or do we want to keep working with the Hewards?
I know there's nothing else I think I have to say about that. I think we've
fair
done
enough. Me neither. I think we're happy.
Oh, actually, one more thing. It probably shouldn't be a rare magic item.
You don't think so?
I mean, like, I know that the magic item rarity table is totally borked anyway. Like, it's nonsense. But like, I think when I look at an item like this and it's like, what does it do? It just lets you carry things. Okay. Like, why is that rare? It's like, because it's really good at letting you carry things. It's like, okay, when has, you know, carrying things been like the challenge of D&D? To the point that like it's the main problem your players want to solve, and if they can't solve it, they will go looking for magic items to deal with it.
How often has your DM demanded of you to calculate the weight of every single thing that you are carrying?
Literally, like, and you know, because of the way that weight works in D&D, like because you have things that are like 0.5 of a pound or whatever, it's like such a pain in the arse, like to figure out like how much carrying capacity you have, especially
because you're using pounds and ounces is like there's 14 ounces in a pound or something.
I don't know anything about ounces. Like like I you know, I mean, like I don't get kilos that much, but I broadly understand kilos because I have to carry like milk, and milk comes in liters, you know,
and a liter is 1 kilo.
And flour comes in kilos. So like between the two of those things, I have a broad idea of like what a kilo is, what half a kilo is. And like, basically I just think like the fact of the matter is that the whole carrying system in D&D is like not built as a gameplay challenge. It's built in a simulationist sense in that it like precisely measures how much things weigh. But like what it probably should do, and what would be more interesting, is if it just said person can carry 10 objects on them, and like, so like, you know, your sword is a object, your shield is a object, your plate mail is probably 3 objects because it's so big. Your backpack gives you +2 object carrying or whatever. Yeah. And like just like literally like boxes you'd fill in, like almost like the you know, the Resident Evil 4 like suitcase full of guns you had. Like that would be a more interesting problem. And a backpack that gives you more of those while not filling up any like object space itself in that kind of game would be really interesting and useful. But we're not playing that game. So I just don't think it should be rare. I think it should be like, I think anything that does something like this, where it's just like a similar effect could be achieved by purchasing a donkey from town.
There you go.
Like, I don't think it should be a rare magic item.
A donkey is actually super rare.
Donkeys are very rare.
Legendary.
There was a great thing, I don't know if it's in 5e, but in Pathfinder, you could like buy animals. Like, you know, you could buy a horse, but you could also buy like hunting dogs and military dogs. And you could buy donkeys, and donkeys were really cheap. And like they were like, it's like donkey, it's like in the little rules description, it's like donkeys aren't really strong enough to be used as mounts, but unlike horses, they're brave enough to go into dungeons. And so like that was the purpose of your donkey. It's like you bring it into a dungeon to carry more stuff. Like that's the only reason you buy one. They're like 8 gold pieces. It's like just the idea of like a fucking caravan of like, you know, donkeys going through like the fucking 2 Maharas or whatever. It's like the stupidest thing.
Yeah, and he just chills out on the edge of combat
anytime. Yeah, exactly. Just stay. Stay.
Right.
Okay, that's been enough. I'm going to do the next item now. I'm going to get us out of here.
Help.
This next item is the Holy Avenger. Weapon, any sword, legendary, requires attunement by a paladin. So that's interesting right away.
Yeah.
You gain a +3 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this magic weapon. When you hit a fiend or an undead with it, that creature takes an extra 2d10 radiant damage. While you hold the drawn sword, it creates an aura in a 10-foot radius around you. You and all creatures friendly to you in the aura have advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects.
Nice.
If you have 17 or more levels in the paladin class, the radius of this aura increases to 30 feet. Sorry, it actually says the radius of the aura, and I just naturally read this aura.
Yeah,
I apologize.
That makes sense, though.
Both make sense. Yeah, I think it made sense both ways, so we're fine.
Yeah. Well, that's handy.
It's just wicked strong.
Yeah. Specifically to a paladin.
Indeed, yeah. So this is interesting because this is a great example of like 5e kind of... It has this interesting idea of like attunement to a specific class.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's interesting that like in other editions it might have been like by alignment, for example. But like 5th edition doesn't really like using alignment for stuff like that. It prefers to use either your class or very rarely it likes to use your race.
Oh yeah. I mean specifically for like Dwarven Thrower and stuff, because those are iconic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the idea is that these have a history with this species of people, and so so it's interesting that it requires attunement by a paladin. I think I don't mind that. I think the only thing I think is a shame is that it sort of like, this is going to sound like a really weird point, but like it creates this thing where like, the best weapon for every paladin is the Holy Avenger. Yeah. Because it's just this really good magic sword that's super good with paladins and rewards you for being a higher level paladin and stuff like that.
Yep.
And not that that's a bad thing. In fact, I think it's a really cool... I to be honest, I love the Holy Avenger. Because what it is it's really straightforward. It's got 2 paragraphs. It's got literally like a fraction of the paragraphs of text of the backpack. But like everything you read gets you excited about the item you just got.
Yeah.
It's got a +3 to like everything. You're just always going to hit. You're always going to do loads of damage. It deals even more damage to things that you're already good at damaging. So you're even better good at damaging them forever.
It's compounding.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's literally like, oh, you were already using Divine Smite. Well, here's more Divine Smite for your Divine Smite. And then it says, oh, and even hey, whatever. While you hold the drawn sword, if you are sitting there, pants around your ankles, cock out in the wind. If you've got this sword drawn,
if you got your sword out and your sword out.
if you're dual wielding, which paladins shouldn't do because they don't get the bonus for it. You and all creatures, everyone you like, all your friends get a bonus. Isn't that nice? And it's really good. And
everyone watching you poop.
I can't go while you're watching. Everyone gets fucking magic resistance, which is super good and really, really good if you happen to be high enough level that you're getting legendary swords, because hey, there's a lot of magic users, as it turns out, and they like to hang out in the high level slots. So that's super good. And the fact that obviously it stacks with your paladin level to increase it to 30 feet is also very, very good.
Yes. Which is, again, just like packing on top of whatever advantage you already get at level 17. It's like whatever you get at level 17 plus your Holy Avenger's aura increases. Yay.
Yeah, exactly.
This makes you a better paladin.
Basically, yeah. Just literally, it increases all your paladin things. So yeah, I really like the Holy Avenger. I think it's really cool.
Very cool.
I think the only thing that like, I don't even know if I dislike this, but something I've noticed is like, paladins have this really strong, because of the Holy Avenger and in general, they have a really strong like, you should be using a sword.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't feel like other classes consistently get like
specific weapon.
Yeah, like the barbarian kind of gets the great axe, but people don't like the great axe because it's a D12 weapon and they don't like rolling a 3, and then they're like, oh good, 3 damage. This was a great time. A good time was had by all.
Exactly.
Like they don't like that, and obviously like the fighter's whole thing is like you can use any weapon, which is fair. But yeah, like it just feels like one of the things that happens a lot in D&D, at least in my experience, is that fucking everyone just has swords.
Yeah.
Like everyone just has swords, which is fine. You're allowed to have swords, but it's just a shame that like, there isn't more. I almost think maybe the problem is that there isn't enough weapons, and so like it's like, oh well, it doesn't really matter what I use, so I'll just take a sword because swords are cool. Whereas like in previous editions of the game, there's been enough weapons and enough different weapons that like the question of what weapon you take and why you take it is a more interesting question.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as like, if I recall correctly, in 4E, there was like proficiency bonus was a per weapon thing rather than a flat thing.
Oh.
So like, in other words, like daggers had like a +3 proficiency bonus, but like broadswords had a +2, because the idea was like a dagger is easier to maneuver with and more accurate than something as big and heavy as a broadsword.
Yeah.
So what that does is like, hey, if you're the kind of class who just gets those bonuses to attack, use something like a broadsword, because you'll probably hit anyway. But like, if you're the rogue and you've got like a lower attack bonus and you kind of need to, play your cards right, and really you're just trying to focus on getting your sneak attack in, daggers make more sense because they have that accuracy. It also means if you want to play a character who hits more, you just take a weapon that hits more.
There you go.
Which is cool and makes you feel different, because you're not using the big sword, you're using the small accurate sword.
Yeah, not necessarily a big unwieldy like great sword or broadsword, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in this it's like, a great sword is effectively as accurate as any other weapon.
Yeah.
And like there's not really a meaningful way to represent.
You can't be a master of one weapon, you're just a master of all of them suddenly.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's less sort of an emphasis on specializing.
You can use a sword really good. You can use a warhammer really good. There you go.
Yeah, and that's fun in its own right, know, the idea of like being kind of able to use anything.
Broadly trained.
But it is a shame that there isn't like, some kind of mechanism or reward system for like, pursuing a specific weapon you want to fight with, and more weapons that encourage you to be like, well, I want to fight in this kind of style, and here's a weapon that rewards that.
Yeah, it's nice. It is good to have something like that, like specifically the sword. Not necessarily a specific sword, and like a rapier is very different to a great sword, but giving them that specific is kind of handy, because then it says like the Holy Avenger can be any sword. So if you have been using a rapier, then you give your, as a DM, don't be like, the only Holy Avenger is a broadsword. So if you're a paladin who wants to use a rapier, you're not allowed.
Broadsword.
Yeah, you're not as good. Or like you have to change over to the broadsword.
Broadsword.
Yeah, cool, nice, good point, Dan.
Thanks. That's it's just something I was thinking about, like, because obviously it's like, do you want to hit them, or do you want to have reach? Because it's like, do you want a spear or a sword? These are the two options we offer.
Yes.
Anyway, anything else on the Holy Avenger that you want to mention?
Specifically, it's straightforward enough that like it's great and it's straightforward, which is what you want.
I think its aura ability might overlap slightly with some other aura. I think the Oath of the Ancients Paladin has some kind of aura that resists magic.
They do tend to have an aura. All of the paladins get an aura.
Yeah.
Aura. I can't remember what it is though. But it's, again, just stacking on top of that. I'd imagine that it wouldn't be whatever aura you have gives them advantage on saving throws and against spells and other magical effects. Specifically, I'd imagine they would have reserved that for this quite famous
sorry. The Aura of Ancients is Aura of Warding, which is that you have resistance to damage from spells. So that's what I was thinking of when I was thinking of protection from spells, but obviously it's a different kind of protection.
Gotcha.
So it's fine.
Handy.
But yeah, it's really good, really strong, it's cool.
Yeah, and it hasn't changed basically since 3.5 when it was introduced.
Oh, it was introduced in 3.5. Oh, cool. I wasn't sure when it was introduced.
Some of the numbers are different, but that's
of course, the specifics. And they're if I recall correctly, 3.5 and like previous editions, certainly Pathfinder had this, and Pathfinder I know was based heavily on 3.5. There'd be like rules of like, here's the things you need to do if you want to build your own Holy Avenger. Like here's the steps you take and stuff like that, which is generally just kind of cool. Just the idea that like you could decide as a party, we're gonna like commit the next 2 sessions to building a really cool magic item.
Sick.
And obviously you can still do that in 5th edition. There's just no rules support.
Yeah, you just pay a smithy and like an enchanter.
You just pay a guy $7 and he'll do it. Give him your expired driver's license and he does it.
Yeah, but the Holy Avenger, it has greater dispel magic instead of an aura of spell stuff.
Oh yeah,
but that's kind of basically the same thing. It has some specifics as to how the greater dispel magic is used. It says only area dispel is possible, not target dispel or counter spell version of the greater dispel magic.
Cool.
And that's just specific wording for the edition, I presume.
Yeah. So basically how dispel magic worked was like you could, as it says, like, greater dispel magic, you could do like an area, or you could do a targeted dispel, or you could do a counter spell. So counter spell wasn't its own spell. Instead, you like readied an action to counter someone else's magic. And there was actually a really cool idea, which was like certain magic countered other magic. So like if you wanted to cast haste, another wizard could counter that by casting slow, because it's like they're antonyms of each other.
Yeah.
But the idea then was the greater, like dispel magic and obviously greater dispel magic were like, because they were just a dispel spell, they were like able to counter anything, because you just stop it from happening rather than trying to specifically like undermine it or whatever.
Stop magic.
So it's basically just clarifying that it's an area, dispel, which is pretty much what this is. It's an area dispel, but it's a preemptive area dispel.
Good stuff. Shall we move on?
Mm-hmm.
The Horn of Blasting. Wondrous item, rare. You can use an action to speak the horn's command word, then blow the horn, which emits a thunderous blast in a 30-foot cone that is audible 600 feet away. Each creature in the cone must make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 5d6 thunder damage and is deafened for 1 minute. On a successful save, a creature takes half as much damage and isn't deafened. Creatures and objects made of glass or crystal have disadvantage on the saving throw and take 6d10 thunder damage instead of 5d6. Or, sorry, 10d6 thunder damage instead of 5d6.
So yeah. That'd be great if it was 6d10. It's like, just swap the dice type.
Yeah, just swap
what's happening?
Each use of the horn's magic has a 20% chance of causing the horn to explode. The explosion deals 10d6 fire damage to the blower and destroys the horn. Jesus.
Hooray.
Bit of a risk there, you know. Just roll the dice on this Horn of Blasting.
Higher risk, higher reward.
Yeah. So that's an interesting old one. I like that. I did look up the oldie version, which came out in AD&D, and it has a 120-foot cone, which is 30 feet wide at the end. So it's specifically like a longer, more narrow cone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any specifics as to like how far away it's heard. It also it has a stun ability. Just reading it off, all within this area must roll a successful saving throw versus spell, which is its own wording. Those saving are stunned for 1 round and deafened for 2. Those failing saving throws sustain 1d10 points of damage, are stunned for 2 rounds and deafened for 4.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's even if you make your save, it's still gonna fuck with you for a little bit.
Still stuns you.
Yeah, which is good fun. It has another specific thing underneath it, which is a wave of ultrasonic sound 1 foot wide and 100 feet long. So it's like a concentrated beam right down the middle.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. It weakens metal, stone, and wood. Which is it's basically a siege item at that point.
Like a siege weapon, or like a almost like a tunneling tool for dungeoneering or something.
Yeah. And then it also has its self-destruct system engaged.
Hooray!
But yeah, that's a fun one. You know, a little bit of a chaotic weapon, I'd say, to be used in combat in 5th edition. Especially if you're going up against creatures and objects made of glass or crystal, which are pretty rare to come across.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. I don't think there are any in the monster manual that I can specifically think of off the top of my head.
I'm trying to think of any now.
Yeah, like I can't. And I've read it through a couple times.
I mean, maybe an ice elemental?
Yeah, but...
Like,
ice is a crystal, yeah, technically.
Yeah, that's it. That's one creature.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the old Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes or the other stuff which have other specific monsters in them.
Oh yeah.
So maybe there are more in those.
I'm trying to remember now. Ooh, yeah. I honestly can't remember. I will say, if you are like the kind of person who's like, I'd really like more different creature types, the similarly named to our podcast, Creature Codex by Kobold Press. Is if you can find it online, it's about the cost of the monster manual, and it has more monsters in it, and the monsters in it are overwhelmingly designed more like as game challenges as opposed to as just creatures that exist in the world.
Yeah.
So they often create a very deliberate strength and weakness in the creature, and it's sort of the player's jobs to try and solve the puzzle of fighting it as they're dealing with it. Yeah. I know for a fact, at the very least, it has glass golems in it, which is just, something.
There you go. Bring along your Horn of Blasting if you're ever coming across any glass golems.
Yeah. Exactly.
But there's not a huge amount more to say about this. I think the old DC set is fine at 15. That's a reasonable amount of damage for it to deal. The fire damage is a little bit of a surprise, but I suppose that's just like magic fire because
it just blows up or whatever.
Explodes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it seems fine. The thing about items like this is I actually really kind of like them. These are probably like items like this, with the exception of maybe some of the stuff about it. But like I love magic items that just do one very specific thing that is magical. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think it's really cool. Like, I know there's a lot of value in, like, it's a really cool, like, you know, thing that does a lot of stuff. But, like, I really love items like this that are just, like, it's just a horn, and when you blow on it, it just does a big area of damage, and that's kind of it. And, like, it makes a bunch of noise. What you can do with that is very dependent on the players.
Yeah.
The main thing I'm struck by is, first of all, that a 20% chance every time you use it to explode is pretty high.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's interesting because one of the things that earlier editions of the game did is they distinguished between magic items and consumable magic items. So like consumable magic item would be like a potion, but like also would
limited
be like stuff
use.
like this.
Yeah,
limited use, exactly. Where like technically you could use this and it would never blow up, but it's got a 20% chance, which means if you use it like you know, more than 5 times, it's effectively guaranteed to explode.
Yeah.
Which means that like you actually kind of have to be careful about how you use it, but also it means that it's actually not as powerful as another equivalent rare item, because there are lots of rare magic items that don't have a chance of exploding every time you use them.
That is
that
true.
might sound like, yeah, that might sound like a strange point, but it's actually something I think is kind of important. Is like if you got like, you know, let's say that for whatever reason you're dungeon delving and you roll on a random table and this is the item the players get. This item is worse than a lot of other rare magic items. I mean, hey, let's just look at the H's. The Helm of Teleportation that lets you teleport 3 times a day is also rare. And like, that's like, the campaign is different now.
Yeah.
This item changes how the game works. The Horn of Blasting, comparatively, lets you cast an alright spell and has a chance of blowing up. Also, just as a final point, there's no way to avoid the damage. Like, there's no saving throw. You just take 10d6 fire damage on the chin. Like,
it explodes in your face.
I just think that's wild, man. Like,
yeah. Like, however tentatively you use it, there's no even specific area of effect. It just blows you up.
No, it's literally just says damage to the person blower, the person who used it, and destroys the horn. Gosh. You can't even like do something clever like use it in a crowd of enemies to try and hurt them as well.
Yeah. Or even like my mind is saying like you could use an extra tube, like keep it at a distance, like a cigarette thing to like smoke at a distance, except for blowing a horn. But it's still gonna, I mean, it says it's gonna blow you up, so I presume it's like magically attached to you somehow, even though it's not attuned. But it's just gonna explode in your face and not hurt anyone else around you, which is a bizarre little specific to give you.
So yeah, like I have a couple of ideas about what you could do with this. One thing I might do is like there's another item. I don't know if we've covered it yet. The fan. Have we covered it? Is it called the wind fan and it's W, or is it just called the something else fan?
I don't think we've come across a fan to my memory.
Well, without going too deep into it, the fan is basically kind of similar to this in that it's a magic item that does one thing, and it also can destroy itself. But the fan has the rule that like the first use is always free, and every use after that has a risk of destroying the item. So I think I'd add that to this, which is that each use of the horn's magic after the first each day has a 20% chance of destroying it.
Okay.
So in other words, your party always know we can use this once and we're just going to get a useful effect.
Yeah.
And they know if we use it again, there's a chance that something goes wrong. Then it becomes something that like, I mean, like I think maybe Matt Colville said this originally, but I'm a big proponent of the idea that like almost nothing is overpowered if your party can only do it once a day.
Yeah. In
other words, like you can give even a very low level party very powerful magic early on, as long as you make it like once per day.
Yeah.
So that they have to be like, is now the time we use it? Because they know they only get one. And so in that same vein, I think the idea that like the Horn of Blasting gets one use and that's guaranteed. Yeah. And then if you can use it again, you still have the item, but every use after the first has a chance of destroying it, and the damage is the same.
Yeah, maybe even just giving it the cooldown as the like once per day you can use it reliably, and then every subsequent use has the 20, or maybe bump it up to like a 33% chance of exploding if you were to.
Oh yeah, that's actually fair. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, make it more dangerous, but with the agreement that you are still definitely getting a use.
Yeah, giving it like a cooldown period where like it's not going to blow up. Like maybe when you blow on it, it becomes slightly hot or something in their hands. If you wanted to give a description of like,
that'd be cool. Yeah,
this is like a warning, like do this, use again at your peril.
Yeah.
I don't have any specific ideas as to how it would be used. Like used in the hands of an enemy or something, it's just going to do the exact same thing. I don't think it's a particularly evocative or exciting thing to use.
Yeah.
It has the deafening thing, so that might affect some people who I don't think much relies on specifically sound. I think it'll remove part of your like maybe you won't be as good at stealthing if you were to like really like work it hard. But you're only deafened for like 1 minute, so
yeah.
It's
the main thing about being deafened is actually that like if you've got the right kind of table, the main thing that happens when you're deafened is you can't communicate. The party literally can't speak to each other.
Yeah.
And the idea that like in a combat situation someone's deafened and they're told like you can't tell the party what you're doing anymore because they're you can tell the party what you're doing but you can't hear them, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you were super into it you could literally give them earmuffs, which would be a lot of fun. Potentially if you were just
earmuffs.
Yeah, just like you have to put these on, and we'll tell you when you can take them off. That could be fun, like as something to do. Depending on the kind of table, I think that's something I'd really enjoy.
Yeah.
If I was like made to wear earmuffs because my character was deafened, I think I'd enjoy that a lot. But yeah, so like the main thing the deafened actually does is like because the rules of 5th edition are quite light, it doesn't really do a lot mechanically, but narratively, unless your players have some means of telepathy, they can't communicate effectively with a deafened character.
I think there is a race that can like read lips, or there's a
observant feat lets you read lips.
Yeah, so that would mitigate that potential. But
and obviously there's the helm of telepathy and stuff like that lets you. So there's other ways, but yeah, maybe that's it. But anyway, yeah, actually on that note, Tim, there is an argument that it could be kind of cool to just give the Horn of Blasting to a group of enemies.
Yeah.
Like, you know, not because it's specifically evocative, but just because it's like a magic item and it's because it doesn't have depth and lore behind it, because it's just a magic item that does one thing. The idea that like a party of, you know, mercenaries that are sent after the party or whatever, just have this magic item that they recovered on their own adventures, and like, you know, when the party beat them, they inherit it, and it just becomes something that they get.
Yeah, the narrative,
kind of cool.
The narrative use of it is not necessarily in the specific item itself; it's in how it is used against the party.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. That's good. Like that definitely allows for like less specifically useful or more broadly useful items to be thrown at the party by, like, as you say, mercenaries or something.
I totally agree. Like I think it's one of the great ways to like get magic items into the hands of your players is like if they're not like, you know, very kind of maybe important magic items, like, you know, the Holy Avenger, just to pick one we've covered this episode. But like if they're like these lesser items like the Horn of Blasting, that just kind of, it's like, oh, it's a magic item, it does one thing, it's kind of cool, but it's very straightforward, like just, you know, literally putting in the hands of enemies that are going to encounter the party, and just like that there isn't a story behind necessarily where these guys got it, and that it's just like, oh, they had this magic item, you beat them, now it's yours, and now you've got this one extra cool tool to hold on to.
Sweet. Let's blow out all the windows in the city.
Let's explode. Will I jump on to the next item?
Go for it, lad.
Horn of Valhalla. Wondrous item. Rare for the silver or brass. The bronze horn is very rare, and the iron horn is legendary.
Nice.
You can use an action to blow this horn.
Wow.
In response, warrior spirits from the plane of Ysgard appear within 60 feet of you. Fucking hell, it's just that escalated.
It's created an entire plane of existence.
Oh, good job. You created a whole plane. These spirits use the Berserker statistics from the Monster Manual. They return to Ysgard after 1 hour, or when they drop to 0 hit points. Once you use the horn, it can't be used again until 7 days have passed. 4 types of Horn of Valhalla are known to exist, each made from a different metal. The horn's type determines how many berserkers answer its summons, as well as the requirement for its use. The DM chooses the horn's type or determines it randomly. And then it has the table here. Obviously, it's got a little D100 table that you can roll on. You're most likely to get the silver horn, and least likely to get the iron horn. So the silver horn summons 2d4 plus 2 berserkers and has no requirements. The brass horn summons 3d4 plus 3 berserkers and requires proficiency with all simple weapons. The bronze horn summons 4d4 plus 4 berserkers and requires proficiency with all medium armor. And the iron horn summons 5d4 plus 5 berserkers and requires proficiency with all martial weapons.
Wow.
Finally, if you blow the horn without meeting its requirement, the summoned berserkers attack you. If you meet the requirement, they are friendly to you and your companions and follow your commands.
There you go.
There you go.
That's a nice little call to arms kind of thing, like phone a friend, essentially.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about Ysgard, but it is apparently just a Forgotten Realms thing.
Oh, fair enough.
Like it is just a D&D thing, because there's lots of guards in Viking and Norse lore. So Ysgard is specific to D&D, so there you go.
Fair enough. I don't know what to say about this item particularly.
Yeah.
It sort of
it's
just
like
does it.
bring in the lads.
Yeah.
I think it's funny how they've kind of swapped the value of them on their heads by their type, like the material that they're made of.
Yeah.
Like silver is worth the least,
Yes.
but technically worth the most.
Yeah. It's like the most precious of the metals, but it's the least valuable of the horns.
Yeah, but also kind of the least useful. Although silver has quite a bit of use in the old versus the undead and versus lichens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Werewolves.
Werewolves. The old iron is famously like you pay the iron price, kind of thing. Like it is blood, it is swords, it is iron armor, it is a very broadly used thing. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool. Then maybe it has to do with like how ancient they are. Maybe the modern world in your setting likes things to be very pretty and nice. So they make silver and brass things, which are very pretty. But back in the day, when there was like real war to be fought or whatever, when you really had to like have hairs on your chest essentially to be able to go out into the world at all, you made an iron one. So its history has like a connection to a specific set of ancient warriors or something, which were very successful. And so they had more of them. I don't know. That's maybe me putting a little bit too much lore. Or maybe having too much to say.
I mean, like I think you can explain it however you like. I don't actually know how I go into it.
Yeah, fair.
I think I'd probably maybe talk about. I mean, they're supposed to come from Eastgard, but my settings don't have an Eastgard. So what I might do instead is like I might talk about how the metals in question are all tied to the spirit world, and they're tied to the spirit world in different ways, which allows you to summon more warriors.
Yeah,
like iron is some kind of base metal that touches the world of undead, and so it can call forth more undead or whatever.
Yeah. Does iron burn vampires? I feel like I might be wrong about that.
Iron Fae don't like iron.
The Fae don't like the iron. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Brass and bronze, I can't remember if they do anything, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know. I think it's fine. Like, it's one of those things where I look at it and it's like once every 7 days you can summon a bunch of lads, and they'll just do something for you.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Sing us a song, there, lads.
Sing us a song, like, but like like so like the Berserker from the Monster Manual. I am actually going to look this up, but I believe the Berserker from the Monster Manual is like pretty high, like CR or like relatively high, like surprisingly so.
I don't have mine to my hand.
Let's have a look here. Damn, there's some cool art, but that's not what I'm looking for. So the Berserker is a challenge 2 monster on its own.
Whoa.
So like each of these, so a Berserker is a fair fight for a party of 4 level 2 adventurers.
Yeah, geez.
So being able to summon at a minimum 4 of them with the basic horn.
Yeah.
Like that's basically like for the next hour, a lot of your fights are going to be much easier.
Yeah. Also, don't force your DM to take control of the Berserkers. If you are calling them into being, you should be in control of them and keep track of them.
I will say in defense of that, the Berserker is a very straightforward stat block.
Oh yeah, he's just a man with sword.
They're just a human. They've got 13 AC, so they're pretty easy to hit. Got 67 hit points. They're kind of tanky. They're basically a barbarian. 30-foot movement. They speak one language, normally common. They'll probably speak common because it's easiest for the party. They've got no skills, no senses. They're kind of strong and kind of tough and don't really have any other amazing stats. They have reckless, so at the start of their turn they can gain advantage on all melee attacks, but all attacks against them have advantage, which just like the barbarian. And then they have one action, which is Great Axe, +5 to hit, reach 5 feet, on hit, D12 +3 slashing damage.
Lads with axes.
Literally just lads, like big lads with axes.
Yeah.
Like, so honestly, the main thing they do, because let's assume that you get these at a point, like let's go ahead and say, oh, the party's about level 7. And they find the silver one. Like the Berserkers are at a point that they only have +5 to hit, which means that a lot of enemies they will probably miss. And they've also got, it says they use the Berserker stats.
Yeah.
It says they're warrior spirits, but they use the Berserker stats, which means that their weapon attacks are not magical. So against any kind of extraplanar creature, they will be dealing half damage.
Yeah.
So the main thing they do, actually, is that they have 67 hit points each.
And they're just harrying whatever thing you're fighting.
Yeah, they have 67 hit points each, and they can occupy a 5-foot square.
There you go.
Those are the 2 things that a barbarian will like that these berserkers do at this level. It's not that they're like not a threat. And in fact, if you have the right kind of party, like if you, for example, are able to like bless these berserkers. They get a plus D4 on their attack rolls and stuff like that. Like anything like that is a huge force multiplier on these dudes.
Yeah.
But like, because the berserker is a low level, kind of dangerous NPC, but like with no scaling, they will not be a significant threat to some high level monsters, not all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's weird. Like honestly, I think the main thing is that like, you know, by the end of it with the Iron Horn, summoning 5d4 plus 5 berserkers is just ridiculous. Like like the actual skirmish game of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons will start to break down at that point.
Yeah. If you get your max, you're at 25.
Yeah. But even assuming you get minimum, even assuming you get 10 berserkers, like 10 berserkers plus the party, plus whatever the party are supposed to be fighting, is just an absurd fight. Like it's just a ridiculous idea. And so like, I actually think if I had a problem with this, it would just be that like, it's a very cool idea, but it doesn't really, it just seems like a pain in the ass to run.
It does.
Like that's honestly the main thing I would say about it.
Yeah.
I think there's some cool stuff. Like I appreciate that the, you know, berserkers appear, they hang out for an hour and they do whatever you ask and you can't get them back for 7 days. I actually think there's some really cool stuff you could do, where like you could use them to like perform non-combat tasks. Like you could use them to
build a fort or something.
Build a fortress, like put an hour and build a fortress, or even like assemble a raft to get you off an island. Or
chop down trees,
use them as chop down trees, or use them as messengers and all that kind of stuff. Like I kind of like the idea of like just having access to a lot of bodies is kind of useful.
Yeah, very broadly.
Yeah, exactly. And like what you could do with that is cool. But those things aren't really problems in D&D a lot of the time. Like, and frankly, a lot of the time, you know, because of the way the rules are written, because of how forgiving they are, like if something like that happens, the party can just kind of say, well, we'll just do this. You know, we'll just build a raft. And like, there's no raft building skill to determine how good your raft is.
Yeah.
And unless you want that to be the story of the campaign, you probably just let them build the raft.
Yeah.
So like, you know, it's sort of like, yeah, it's cool, but there's nothing that this item does that like just the party themselves couldn't do. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's
tricky, but it is an interesting, it does give a very, again, like a broad ability to do something. Like, yeah, they're handy in the fight, but like they could be all of those things that you mentioned, as well as like footmen, essentially, just for the hour. Like if you're trying to talk to somebody who's in a fortress that you're besieging, or in a dungeon, and you have to send a messenger between you, maybe that would be useful. But then if they don't have this, then the fortress will also presumably have messengers that they could use. So it gives you maybe a step in the right direction towards like taking the advantage in like being the one to send the first messenger. But that's more like a political move than it would be necessarily an aggressive move, which I think is typically very, very much the go-to for most D&D parties. But yeah, it's a fine thing. Horn of Valhalla. If you want some lads, have a party. Bring them around for an hour.
I need lads.
Shall we move on to the last two? I think we'll relatively well fly through these.
Oh yeah.
Which is a pun, as you'll come to understand now.
Yes.
Horseshoes of a Zephyr. A wondrous item, very rare. These iron horseshoes come in a set of 4. While all 4 shoes are affixed to the hooves of a horse or similar creature, they allow the creature to move normally while floating 4 inches above the ground. This effect means the creature can cross or stand above non-solid or unstable surfaces, such as water or lava. The creature leaves no tracks and ignores difficult terrain. In addition, the creature can move at normal speeds for up to 12 hours a day without suffering exhaustion from a forced march.
Wow.
Hear
that, Tim? You can ignore the forced march rules.
Oh, whoa.
You know those rules you're always complaining about that always come up in the game?
Those
always
the game
stop
of D&D
we play
tracks.
that always stop us from having fun. The forced march rules that we use all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just remind me how those work? Because I don't have my rulebook on, and I know you care about them a lot. Can you just remind me?
I mean, it gives it to us right there. Suffer from exhaustion on a forced march. Like, you're basically sprinting somewhere, so you get exhaustion. But now you don't with the horseshoes of Zephyr.
Real mechanics. There you go.
Wow.
These are fine.
Yeah, very rare for a set of 4 means that only one person in your party is going to be able to get across the lava field.
Yeah.
Unless they like shuck them off the horse and then they throw them back across the lava.
Back across. Your turn.
No, because you could just skim them across the lava, because it's the horseshoes that are magic, and it's not a required attunement. So your horse doesn't, or your Beast of Burden doesn't have to attune to these horseshoes.
Yeah. Okay, so these, they're fine.
Yeah.
They're totally unremarkable. You know what they remind me of?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember in Oblivion, you could make your own spells?
Yes.
And one of my favorite spells you could make is you could make Water Walk on touch.
Ooh.
So Water Walk was a spell effect where you could walk across water as if it was solid. And you could make that a touch spell. And then you could walk up to your horse and cast it on your horse. Mm-hmm. And then you could ride your horse across the river, the moat surrounding the Imperial City. And that was lots of fun. That's it, man. That's literally all this does. It's like, but it's not even that good because you don't even run on the water, which is kind of cool and iconic.
Yeah.
You just run above the water. Mm-hmm. And why is it 4 inches? What is that? Why?
Maybe that's, if you're 4 inches over lava, then you melt. But if you're outside of 4 inches, the lava's like, oh, we almost got
Can't
you.
get him. That was another thing I was thinking. If you were 4 inches above lava, I think you still like die.
Yeah, you're still melting. What it reminded me of is the story of Niamh, who came to Uisín to take him away to Tír na Nog in Irish mythology, who rode across the sea on a horse and was like, lad, come on, let's hit the road. And then he sets out, leaving Ferdia behind. And but that's about it. Like these. Yeah,
you're not like, get off the horse.
Yeah, don't get off the horse. Well, that's when he comes back. That's when he comes back.
Yeah, I know that's when he comes back. But yeah, still.
Maybe he should have fixed the horseshoes to himself.
And then he could never touch the ground. Clever.
Very good.
Of course, it wouldn't work because he'd have to affix all 4 shoes to the hooves of a horse or similar creature, and he is neither horse nor similar creature.
Yes.
Except in kind of a spiritual sense, they're both mammals, I guess. So these are fine. They're just really unexciting.
Yeah, it's not even like a floating thing. Like you can't go across a chasm with them. They're just like you float 4 inches. If you fall down a chasm with these, do you die 4 inches from the ground? Yeah. Very strange.
Also, just here's a fun fact: no one uses mount in combat, and any item that enhances your mount is garbage. No thanks. I don't need. Yeah, all right. Will we just do the last one? Get out of here.
Go on.
Okay, horseshoes of speed, wondrous item, rare. These iron horseshoes, why are they fucking iron both times? They're magic. They can be made of anything. Yeah. These iron horseshoes come in a set of 4. While all 4 shoes are affixed to the hooves of a horse or similar creature, they increase the creature's walking speed by 30 feet. Again, I've just explained this. Yeah. You've just given like one character in a party of at least 4 players. Okay, not at least 4. In a party of at least 2 players, you have just increased the speed of one of their horses. Not even one of them, one of their horses by like not that much.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm just trying to imagine a set of circumstances where like this is it. This is the magic item you get that you wanted, and like
we beat the game. What it makes me think of is like if you put these on a horse who is not used to moving that fast, they're suddenly going to be running into everything. It's
that's true.
You take one step and you've effectively moved 2.
Yeah.
Or slightly less than 2 for a horse, because I think their natural move speed is 50.
Oh, I think you're right. Yeah, they're quite fast.
Yeah, so it's very strange. It doesn't even double the speed of a horse. It
doesn't even double it. It just adds 30 feet.
Yeah, by your move speed. Gosh, very strange. Anyway,
I actually do want to like do a quick pit stop here and just talk about both these items, because both these items are horseshoes.
Yes.
And I believe, I might be wrong, but I believe this is the only time we see items that affect players' mounts.
Could very well be. I'd imagine there could be a wings thing, but yeah, it might be right.
There might be items that aren't specific and therefore could potentially affect mounts. But these are the only times we see an item. It's like the assumption is that the party or the player character in question has a horse and wants to improve the horse.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool idea. And I think there's a lot of tales in heroic fantasy where the horse of the character is a character in their own right.
Yeah.
And we learn to care about this animal in a way because of its relationship with our protagonist.
Yes.
And I think the idea that therefore your mount maybe deserves magic items isn't a bad instinct. But I guess I very fundamentally feel like there's very little rule support for that kind of heroic fantasy, with the exception of the Ranger class Beastmaster.
Oh, yeah.
Like subclass, which is the only, which as far as I can recall is the only kind of entity that deals specifically with like, I like animals. And I know that there's like I know there's some pet classes now, like the Artificer is a pet class now and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But like, the idea that like you are like a fighter and you have a horse and you're both perfectly mundane things and you improve your horse by like getting a magic item for your horse.
Yep.
Like it's a great start, but I feel like it doesn't work because there's very little, like mounted combat's a kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And no one likes to do it because either everyone's mounted or no one is. And your horse has no HP and it just dies because like the game scales so hard that like the fire breath of a dragon just turns your horse into horse meat. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like
there aren't many like puzzles that this would like solve.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, in a very fundamental sense, I think that's a very good way to look at it.
Like unless you are very strict about the puzzles that you run, it's just a little bit awkward. The horseshoes of a Zephyr, if you place a lava field in front of your players, they're going to find another way to get over it. They're going to like splash water over it or something.
Create water is like a first level spell?
If there's a raging river, even with like a raging river, it would be awkward in these shoes because you're only 4 inches off the surface.
Yeah.
And a raging river is going to be like undulating and like splashing all over the place. So it's not necessarily going to make that easier for you. Might even make it a bit more awkward and your horse might get spooked in the real world. But like the problems that these horseshoes solve are not necessarily problems that you will face in Dungeons & Dragons.
They basically solve problems that don't exist.
Yeah.
Like the actual problems with mounts in 5th edition is I'd actually argue that with how the rules work, the rules for using mounts in combat are actually very simple. But the problem is that people think they're complicated. Which makes them kind of complicated by default. But also the massive increase in speed that you get from being on a mount is a really difficult thing to balance around.
Yeah.
If, for example, a dismounted barbarian was trying to deal with a mounted archer, there's nothing they can do, right? Like in real life, like in that kind of asymmetric fight, the barbarian might like look for dense woods where the horse can't use its speed, and maybe the archer has to dismount to even find them. And like that kind of like asymmetric battle is cool, but it doesn't really work in 5th edition.
No.
So like the problems with the mounts are just that like people don't want to use them, and if people like want to care about their horses, they probably want to keep them out of danger because they're really like squishy. Like a horse has the fraction of a health of like an 8th level fighter, and the items that support mounts should probably be items that either give you a mount, just an item that's just you have a mount all the time, like you've got a mount, or an item that's just like your mount is immortal. Like like
or like a nightmare. Even a nightmare wouldn't even need to use these.
Like, so basically, like, the best mount system is the Find Steed Paladin spell.
Yes.
And I would effectively say, like, that's probably the gold standard, and everything else needs to be reaching that.
Yeah.
And that these items don't help you reach that.
Nope.
And they don't really do anything.
Yeah. And that it's not like, basically all that you've said. I was about to recapitulate what you said as I was about to say it, so there's not very much more that you need to say. That's kind of it.
Yeah, like, it would be great to see, like, mounted combat be a part of D&D, because it's a great part of heroic fantasy. But, like...
it doesn't quite work with it.
The rules don't really support, like... Because, like, one of the main things is that, like, a lot of mounted combat is supposed to be, like, a running battle. Like, there's very little reason that you'd all stop moving if you're on horses.
Yeah.
But, like, there's very little reason to move in D&D unless you're trying to do something. Yeah. And there's a lot of punishment for moving in D&D. So, like, you have to have a good reason for moving. Yeah. There's just, like, lots of ways the combat works that doesn't really work with mounts. Yeah. It's just weird. It's just a weird thing. It's just a weird thing of, like, how the game works. And, like, its default assumption is that, like, everyone should be on the table and all the players should be really fast. Yeah. And if you change that default assumption so that all the players were slow and mounts were the way to become fast, you could change the game. Like if players moved like 20 feet around instead of 30 by default, and fast races and classes moved 30 and horses moved 35, like that would, massively change how valuable a horse is. But as it stands, you're probably able to reach most things after moving once or twice in most combats. Yeah. So like what does a horse do that the run action doesn't do, or whatever it's called?
Sprint. Sure, there you go. Shall we finish her up?
I think we should.
I think we have.
Oh my god.
So that was part 2 of the H's. very much worth it.
Yeah.
I think we had a grand old time talking about most of those.
Yeah.
We got a little bit frustrated.
Indeed.
Not quite as frustrated as we have with previous items, but like that was more a result of their specific need to maybe some specific players to look after their mount with regards to horseshoes. But
yeah, or in fairness, it could be the classic, these are really old magic items that people are used to seeing, and so we should have them in the rules because they're part of the identity of D&D.
Yeah. Or maybe even it's kind of to show how the items have changed from 2nd edition to 5th edition and gives them a kind of a template to work with regards shaping their own items that maybe they have made. Like the consistency between like the horseshoes of a Zephyr are also from AD&D. Both of these horseshoes are from AD&D. There's also oh no, there isn't actually. These are the 2 horseshoes that you get in AD&D. But like looking at one and then looking at the other and then comparing your notes basically will help you to understand better how to create magic items from your previous games to this one, which I think is pretty much all you need these guys for.
Yeah.
And so that's H part 2.
It is.
Thank you so much, everybody.
If you've enjoyed listening, you can subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to this on. You can also visit our website, which is creatureclubpodcast.com, and you can find the episode and every other episode and a bunch of other stuff we've done, including the homebrew specials, and you can find the documentation about that. You can also get those on the DMs Guild, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
You can also, if you don't like websites, and who does, you can also email us instead. You can go to creatureclubpodcast@gmail.com, and that's best for your long form feedbacks and your homebrew submissions and that kinds of thing. Or if you just got thoughts that you can sum up in less than 240 characters, which is a very convenient number, you can go on Twitter. We are @CreatureClubPod. You can comment below the episode if you have any thoughts on it. If you comment on basically anything on the Twitter, we'll probably see it at one stage or another. So that's a good place to get back to us with here's the reason the horseshoes are actually really good and useful, and you're wrong for criticizing them, which is fine because honestly, I really like being wrong about things like the horseshoes are bad because it's like, oh good, someone's using them and they're actually useful. Because ultimately, the value of the game is just in how it's played. Yeah,
and the value of us sharing our thoughts on it is that you can also share yours with us. Like, we had a couple cool ideas for some of these items, but your ideas are just as valid,
Exactly.
We might have just missed something, some specific part, or some other use that these may have had. So if you think of something, feel free to let us know, and we will get back to you on the Twitter. We might mention it in a next episode. I don't think we've had many corrections because we're so brilliant and amazing.
Exactly.
But
that's the way.
But yeah, that's just about it.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Treasure Trove. What is it
I'm really surprised, Tim, how quiet your kittens have been.
My what?
I'm actually I'm a little disappointed with how quiet the kittens have been.
They've actually been very, very quiet. I
haven't heard them at all.
My wife and I have fostered 2 little stray kittens because my wife has a heart of gold.
My wife. Sorry.
Is that from the famous?
Ivy does have a heart of gold. Please continue the nice story. I just couldn't resist.
And so we've taken them in just in the last 2 days as of recording, and their name are Snip and Littlefoot, and they were fighting in the other room. I could see them kind of wrestling across the way amongst some little pieces of papier-mâché that we gave them to play with. But they've been quiet. They don't make a lot of noise around me. I don't actually know specifically where they are right now. They're probably asleep, little angels.
Up to shenanigans.
Shenanigans, of course. But that's about the latest news in my world. But they're very quiet.
Anyway, we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, but how, Daniel? How do we don't have Mikey?
Let me get Mikey on the phone. Let's see here.
Call him up. Hello, Mikey.
Hello, Mikey. Hello, Polis.
Is this Mr. Polis?
Is this Mr. DC?
Please maintain a state of temperature that is potentially suboptimal.
Achieve absolute zero.
Mine is a request and yours is a demand. That's hilarious. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Bye.